Hello friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie Inception in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like, and if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is Inception. So we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch Inception film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video, where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining. So you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So, let's start the video. Inception is a 2010 science fiction action heist film written and directed by Christopher Nolan, who also produced it with Emma Thomas, his wife. The film stars Leonardo DiCaprio as a professional thief who steals information by infiltrating the subconscious of his targets. He is offered a chance to have his criminal history erased as payment for the implantation of another person's idea into a target's subconscious. The ensemble cast includes Ken Watanabe, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Marion Cotillard, Elliot Page, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Tom Berenger, Dileep Rao, and Michael Caine. After the 2002 completion of Insomnia, Nolan presented to Warner Bros. A written 80-page treatment for a horror film envisioning dream stealers based on lucid dreaming. Deciding he needed more experience before tackling a production of this magnitude and complexity, Nolan shelved the project and instead worked on 2005's Batman Begins, 2006's The Prestige, and 2008's The Dark Knight. The treatment was revised over 6 months and was purchased by Warner in February 2009. Inception was filmed in 6 countries, beginning in Tokyo on June 19th and ending in Canada on November 22nd. Its official budget was $160 million, split between Warner Bros. And Legendary. Nolan's reputation and success with The Dark Knight helped secure the film's $100 million in advertising expenditure. Inception's premiere was held in London on July 8, 2010. It was released in both conventional and IMAX theaters beginning on July 16, 2010. Inception grossed over $839 million worldwide, becoming the 4th highest-grossing film of 2010. Considered one of the best films of the 2010s and the 21st century, Inception, among its numerous accolades, won 4 Oscars: Best Cinematography, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, Best Visual Effects, and was nominated for 4 more: Best Picture, Best Original Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Original Score at the 83rd Academy Awards. Plot: Dom Cobb and Arthur are extractors who perform corporate espionage using experimental dream-sharing technology to infiltrate their target's subconscious and extract information. Their latest target, Saito, is impressed with Cobb's ability to layer multiple dreams within each other. He offers to hire Cobb for the ostensibly impossible job of implanting an idea into a person's subconscious, performing Inception on Robert Fisher, the son of Saito's competitor Maurice Fisher, with the idea to dissolve his father's company. In return, Saito promises to clear Cobb's criminal status, allowing him to return home to his children. Cobb accepts the offer and assembles his team: a forger named Eames, a chemist named Yusuf, and a college student named Ariadne. Ariadne is tasked with designing the dream's architecture, something Cobb himself cannot do for fear of being sabotaged by his mind's projection of his late wife, Mal. Maurice Fisher dies, and the team sedates Robert Fisher into a 3-layer shared dream on an airplane to America bought by Saito. Time on each layer runs slower than the layer above, with one member staying behind on each to perform a music-synchronized kick using the French song Non, je ne regrette rien, to awaken dreamers on all 3 levels simultaneously. The team abducts Robert in a city on the 1st level, but unknown to any team member, his subconscious projections, trained to anticipate such a scenario, attack them. After Saito is wounded, Cobb reveals that while dying in the dream would usually awaken dreamers, Yusuf's sedatives will instead send them into limbo, a world of infinite subconscious. Eames impersonates Robert's godfather, Peter Browning, to introduce the idea of an alternate will to dissolve the company. Cobb explains to Ariadne that he and Mal entered limbo while experimenting with dream sharing, experiencing 50 years in one night due to the time dilation with reality. After waking up, Mal still believed she was dreaming. Attempting to wake up, she committed suicide and framed Cobb for her murder to force him to do the same. Cobb fled the U.S., leaving his children behind. Yusuf drives the team around the first level as they are sedated into the second level, a hotel dreamed by Arthur. Cobb persuades Robert that Browning has kidnapped him to stop the dissolution and that Cobb is a defensive projection, leading Robert to another third level deeper as part of a ruse to enter Robert's subconscious. In the third level, the team infiltrates an alpine fortress with a projection of Maurice inside, where the Inception itself can be performed. However, Yusuf performs his kick too soon by driving off a bridge, forcing Arthur and Eames to improvise a new set of kicks synchronized with them hitting the water by rigging an elevator and the fortress, respectively, with explosives. Mal then appears and kills Robert before he can be subjected to the Inception. He and Saito are subsequently lost in limbo, forcing Cobb and Ariadne to rescue them in time for Robert's Inception and Eames's kick. Cobb reveals that during their time in limbo, Mal refused to return to reality. Cobb had to convince her it was only a dream, accidentally incepting in her the belief that the real world was still a dream. Cobb makes peace with his part in Mal's death. Ariadne kills Mal's projection and wakes Robert up with a kick. Revived into the third level, Robert discovers the planted idea, his dying father telling him to create something for himself. While Cobb searches for Saito in limbo, the others ride the synced kicks back to reality. Cobb finds an aged Saito and reminds him of their agreement. The dreamers all awaken on the plane, and Saito makes a phone call. Arriving in Los Angeles, Cobb passes the immigration checkpoint, and his father-in-law accompanies him to his home. Cobb uses Mal's totem, a top that spins indefinitely in a dream, to test if he is indeed in the real world, but he chooses not to observe the result and instead joins his children. Cast Leonardo DiCaprio as Dom Cobb, a professional thief who specializes in conning secrets from his victims by infiltrating their dreams. DiCaprio was the first actor to be cast in the film. Brad Pitt and Will Smith were the top two choices and were offered the role, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Smith turned it down because he didn't understand it. Cobb's role is compared to the haunted widower in a gothic romance. Ken Watanabe as Saito, a Japanese businessman who employs Cobb for the team's mission. Nolan wrote the role with Watanabe in mind, as he wanted to work with him again after Batman Begins. Inception is Watanabe's first work in a contemporary setting where his primary language is English. Watanabe tried to emphasize a different characteristic of Saito in every dream level. First chapter in my castle, I pick up some hidden feelings of the cycle. It's magical, powerful, and then the first dream. And back to the second chapter, in the old hotel, I pick up being sharp and more calm and smart, and it's a little bit of a different process to make up the character of any movie. Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Arthur, Cobb's partner who manages and researches the missions. Gordon-Levitt compared Arthur to the producer of Cobb's art, the one saying, "Okay, you have your vision, now I'm going to figure out how to make all the nuts and bolts work so you can do your thing." The actor did all but one of his stunt scenes and said the preparation was a challenge and it would have to be for it to look real. James Franco was in talks with Christopher Nolan to play Arthur, but was ultimately unavailable due to scheduling conflicts. Marion Cotillard as Mal, Cobb's deceased wife. She is a manifestation of Cobb's guilt about the real cause of Mal's suicide. He is unable to control these projections of her, challenging his abilities as an extractor. Nolan described Mal as the essence of the femme fatale, and DiCaprio praised Cotillard's performance, saying that she can be strong and vulnerable and hopeful and heartbreaking all in the same moment, which was perfect for all the contradictions of her character. Elliot Page as Ariadne, a graduate student of architecture who is recruited to construct the various dreamscapes, which are described as mazes. The name Ariadne alludes to a princess of Greek myth, daughter of King Minos, who aided the hero Theseus by giving him a sword and a ball of string to help him navigate the labyrinth, which was the prison of the Minotaur. Nolan said that Page was chosen for being a perfect combination of freshness and savvy and maturity beyond his years. Page said their character acts as a proxy to the audience, as she's just learning about these ideas and, in essence, assists the audience in learning about dream sharing. Tom Hardy as Eames, a sharp-tongued associate of Cobb. He is referred to as a fence, but his specialty is forgery, more accurately, identity theft. Eames uses his ability to impersonate others inside the dream world in order to manipulate Fisher. Hardy described his character as an old, Graham Greene-type diplomat, sort of faded, shabby grandeur, the old Shakespeare lovey mixed with somebody from Her Majesty's Special Forces who wears campy, old-money costumes. Cillian Murphy as Robert Fisher, the heir to a business empire and the team's target. Murphy said Fisher was portrayed as a petulant child who's in need of a lot of attention from his father. He has everything he could ever want materially, but he's deeply lacking emotionally. The actor also researched the sons of Rupert Murdoch, to add to that the idea of living in the shadow of someone so immensely powerful. Tom Berenger as Peter Browning, Robert Fisher's godfather and fellow executive at the Fisher's company. Berenger said Browning acts as a surrogate father to Fisher, who calls the character Uncle Peter, and emphasized that Browning has been with Robert his whole life and has probably spent more quality time with him than his own father. 11. Michael Caine as Stephen Miles, Cobb's mentor and father-in-law, and Ariadne's college professor who recommends her to the team. Dileep Rao as Yusuf. Rao describes Yusuf as an avant-garde pharmacologist who is a resource for people like Cobb who want to do this work unsupervised, unregistered, and unapproved of by anyone. Co-producer Jordan Goldberg said the role of the chemist was particularly tough because you don't want him to seem like some kind of drug dealer, and that Rao was cast for being funny, interesting, and obviously smart. Lucas Haas as Nash, an architect in Cobb's employment who betrays the team and is later replaced by Ariadne. Tallulah Riley as a woman, credited as Blonde, whom Eames disguises himself as in a dream. Riley liked the role, despite it being minimal. I get to wear a nice dress, pick up men in bars, and shove them in elevators. It was good to do something adultish. Usually I play 15-year-old English schoolgirls. Pete Postlethwaite as Maurice Fisher, Robert Fisher's father and the dying founder of a business empire. Production. Development. Initially, Christopher Nolan wrote an 80-page treatment about dream stealers. Nolan had originally envisioned Inception as a horror film, but eventually wrote it as a heist film, even though he found that traditionally they are very deliberately superficial in emotional terms. Upon revisiting his script, he decided that basing it in that genre did not work because the story relies so heavily on the idea of the interior state, the idea of dream and memory. I realized I needed to raise the emotional stakes. Nolan worked on the script for 9 to 10 years. When he first started thinking about making the film, Nolan was influenced by that era of movies where you had The Matrix, 1999, you had Dark City, 1998, you had The 13th Floor, 1999, and to a certain extent, you had Memento, 2002. They were based in the principles that the world around you might not be real. Nolan first pitched the film to Warner Bros. In 2001, but decided that he needed more experience making large-scale films and embarked on Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. He soon realized that a film like Inception needed a large budget because as soon as you're talking about dreams, the potential of the human mind is infinite. And so the scale of the film has to feel infinite. It has to feel like you could go anywhere by the end of the film, and it has to work on a massive scale. After making The Dark Knight, Nolan decided to make Inception and spent 6 months completing the script. Nolan said that the key to completing the script was wondering what would happen if several people shared the same dream. Once you remove the privacy, You've created an infinite number of alternative universes in which people can meaningfully interact, with validity, with weight, with dramatic consequences. Nolan had been trying to work with Leonardo DiCaprio for years and met him several times, but was unable to recruit him for any of his films until Inception. DiCaprio finally agreed because he was intrigued by this concept, this dream heist notion, and how this character is going to unlock his dream world and ultimately affect his real life. He read the script and found it to be very well written, comprehensive, but you really had to have Chris in person to try to articulate some of the things that have been swirling around his head for the last 8 years. DiCaprio and Nolan spent months talking about the screenplay. Nolan took a long time rewriting the script in order to make sure that the emotional journey of his DiCaprio's character was the driving force of the movie. On February 11, 2009, it was announced that Warner Bros. Purchased Inception, a spec script written by Nolan. Locations and sets. Principal photography began in Tokyo on June 19, 2009, with the scene in which Saito first hires Cobb during a helicopter flight over the city. The production moved to the United Kingdom and shot in a converted airship hangar in Cardington, Bedfordshire, north of London. There, the hotel bar set, which tilted 30 degrees, was built. A hotel corridor was also constructed by Guy Hendricks Dias, the production designer, Chris Corbould, the special effects supervisor, and Wally Pfister, the director of photography. It rotated a full 360 degrees to create the effect of alternate directions of gravity for scenes set during the second level of dreaming, where dream sector physics become chaotic. The idea was inspired by a technique used in Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, 1968. Nolan said, "I was interested in taking those ideas, techniques, and philosophies and applying them to an action scenario." The filmmakers originally planned to make the hallway only 40 feet, 12 meters long, but as the action sequence became more elaborate, the hallway's length was increased to 100 feet, 30 meters. The corridor was suspended along 8 large concentric rings that were spaced equidistantly outside its walls and powered by 2 massive electric motors. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who plays Arthur, spent several weeks learning to fight in a corridor that spun like a giant hamster wheel. Nolan said of the device, "It was like some incredible torture device. We thrashed Joseph for weeks, but in the end we looked at the footage and it looks unlike anything any of us has seen before. The rhythm of it is unique, and when you watch it, even if you know how it was done, it confuses your perceptions. It's unsettling in a wonderful way." Gordon-Levitt remembered, "It was 6-day weeks of just like coming home at night battered. The light fixtures on the ceiling are coming around on the floor, and you have to choose the right time to cross through them, and if you don't, you're going to fall." On July 15, 2009, filming took place at University College London for the sequences occurring inside a Paris College of Architecture in the story, including the library, Flaxman Gallery, and Gustave Tuck Theatre. Filming moved to France, where they shot Cobb entering the College of Architecture. The place used for the entrance was the Musée Galliera, and the pivotal scenes between Ariadne and Cobb in a bistro, a fictional one set up at the corner of Rue César Franck and Rue Bouchou, and lastly on the Bierhaken Bridge. For the explosion that takes place during the bistro scene, local authorities would not allow the use of real explosives. High-pressure nitrogen was used to create the effect of a series of explosions. Pfister used 6 high-speed cameras to capture the sequence from different angles and make sure that they got the shot. The visual effects department enhanced the sequence, adding more destruction and flying debris. For the Paris folding sequence, and when Ariadne creates the bridges, green screen and CGI were used on location. Tangier, Morocco, doubled as Mombasa, where Cobb hires Eames and Yusuf. A foot chase was shot in the streets and alleyways of the historic Medina Quarter. To capture this sequence, Pfister employed a mix of handheld camera and Steadicam work. Tangier was also used as the setting for filming an important riot scene during the initial foray into Saito's mind. Filming moved to the Los Angeles area, where some sets were built on a Warner Brothers soundstage including the interior rooms of Saito's Japanese castle. The exterior was done on a small set built in Malibu Beach. The dining room was inspired by the historic Nijo Castle, built around 1603. These sets were inspired by a mix of Japanese architecture and Western influences. The production staged a multi-vehicle car chase on the streets of downtown Los Angeles, which involved a freight train crashing down the middle of a street. To do this, the filmmakers configured a train engine on the chassis of a tractor trailer. The replica was made from fiberglass molds taken from authentic train parts and matched in terms of color and design. Also, the car chase was supposed to be set in the midst of a downpour, but the LA weather stayed typically sunny. The filmmakers set up elaborate effects, e.g. rooftop water cannons, to give the audience the impression that the weather was overcast and soggy. LA was also the site of the climactic scene where a Ford Econoline van runs off the Schuylerheim Bridge in slow motion. This sequence was filmed on and off for months, with the van being shot out of a cannon, according to actor Dileep Rao. Capturing the actors suspended within the van in slow motion took a whole day to film. Once the van landed in the water, the challenge for the actors was to avoid panic. And when they ask you to act, it's a bit of an ask, explained Cillian Murphy. The actors had to be underwater for 4 to 5 minutes while drawing air from scuba tanks. Underwater buddy breathing is shown in this sequence. Cobb's house was in Pasadena. The hotel lobby was filmed at the CAA building in Century City. Limbo was made on location in Los Angeles and Morocco, with the beach scene filmed at Palos Verdes Beach with CGI buildings. En Hope State in Los Angeles was the primary filming location for Limbo, with green screen and CGI being used to create the dream landscape. The final phase of principal photography took place in Alberta in late November 2009. The location manager discovered a temporarily closed ski resort, Fortress Mountain. An elaborate set was assembled near the top station of the Canadian chairlift, taking 3 months to build. The production had to wait for a huge snowstorm, which eventually arrived. The ski chase sequence was inspired by Nolan's favorite James Bond film, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. What I liked about it that we've tried to emulate in this film is there's a tremendous balance in that movie of action and scale and romanticism and tragedy and emotion. Cinematography. The film was shot primarily in the anamorphic format on 35mm film, with key sequences filmed on 65mm and aerial sequences in VistaVision. Nolan did not shoot any footage with IMAX cameras as he had with The Dark Knight. We didn't feel that we were going to be able to shoot in IMAX because of the size of the cameras, because this film, given that it deals with a potentially surreal area, the nature of dreams and so forth, I wanted it to be as realistic as possible. Not be bound by the scale of those IMAX cameras, even though I love the format dearly. In addition, Nolan and Pfister tested using ShowScan and Super Dimension 70 as potential large-format, high-frame-rate camera systems to use for the film, but ultimately decided against either format. Sequences in slow motion were filmed on a Photosonics 35mm camera at speeds of up to 1,000 frames per second. Wally Pfister tested shooting some of these sequences using a high-speed digital camera, but found the format to be too unreliable due to technical glitches. Out of 6 times that we shot on the digital format, we only had one usable piece, and it didn't end up in the film. Out of the 6 times we shot with the Photosonics camera and 35mm running through it, every single shot was in the movie. Nolan also chose not to shoot any of the film in 3D, as he prefers shooting on film using prime lenses, which is not possible with 3D cameras. Nolan has also criticized the dim image that 3D projection produces and disputes that traditional film does not allow realistic depth perception, saying, "I think it's a misnomer to call it 3D versus 2D. The whole point of cinematic imagery is it's three-dimensional. 95% of our depth cues come from occlusion, resolution, color, and so forth, so the idea of calling a 2D movie a 2D movie is a little misleading." Nolan did test converting Inception into 3D in post-production, but decided that, while it was possible, he lacked the time to complete the conversion to a standard he was happy with. In February 2011, Jonathan Liebsman suggested that Warner Bros. Were attempting a 3D conversion for Blu-ray release. Wally Pfister gave each location and dream level a distinctive look to aid the audience's recognition of the narrative's location during the heavily cross-cut portion of the film. The mountain fortress appears sterile and cool, the hotel hallways have warm hues, and the scenes in the van are more neutral. Nolan has said that the film deals with levels of reality and perceptions of reality, which is something I'm very interested in. It's an action film set in a contemporary world, but with a slight science fiction bent to it, while also describing it as very much an ensemble film, structured somewhat as a heist movie. It's an action-adventure that spans the globe. Visual effects. For dream sequences in Inception, Nolan used little CGI, preferring practical effects whenever possible. Nolan said, "It's always very important to me to do as much as possible in camera, and then, if necessary, computer graphics are very useful to build on or enhance what you have achieved physically." To this end, visual effects supervisor Paul Franklin built miniatures of the mountain fortress set and then blew it up for the film. For the fight scene that takes place in zero gravity, he used CGI-based effects to subtly bend elements like physics, space, and time. The most challenging effect was the limbo city level at the end of the film, because it continually developed during production. Franklin had artists build concepts while Nolan expressed his ideal vision, something glacial with clear modernist architecture, but with chunks of it breaking off into the sea like icebergs. Franklin and his team ended up with something that looked like an iceberg version of Gotham City with water running through it. They created a basic model of a glacier, and then designers created a program that added elements like roads, intersections, and ravines until they had a complex yet organic-looking cityscape. For the Paris folding sequence, Franklin had artists producing concept sketches, and then they created rough computer animations to give them an idea of what the sequence looked like while in motion. Later during principal photography, Nolan was able to direct DiCaprio and Page based on this rough computer animation that Franklin had created. Inception had nearly 500 visual effects shots. In comparison, Batman Begins had approximately 620, which is relatively few in comparison to contemporary effects-heavy films, which can have as many as 2,000 visual effects shots. Music. Main article, Inception, music from the motion picture. The score for Inception was composed and arranged by Hans Zimmer, who described his work as a very electronic, dense score, filled with nostalgia and sadness to match Cobb's feelings throughout the film. The music was written simultaneously to filming and features a guitar sound reminiscent of Ennio Morricone, played by Johnny Marr, former guitarist of the Smiths. Edith Piaf's Non, Je ne regrette rien, No, I Regret Nothing, appears throughout the film, used to accurately time the dreams, and Zimmer reworked pieces of the song into cues of the score. A soundtrack album was released on July 11, 2010, by Reprise Records. The majority of the score was also included in high-resolution 5.1 surround sound on the second disc of the 2-disc Blu-ray release. Hans Zimmer's music was nominated for an Academy Award in the Best Original Score category in 2011, losing to Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross of The Social Network. Themes: reality and dreams. In Inception, Nolan wanted to explore the idea of people sharing a dream space. That gives you the ability to access somebody's unconscious mind. What would that be used and abused for? The majority of the film's plot takes place in these interconnected dream worlds. This structure creates a framework where actions in the real or dream worlds ripple across others. The dream is always in a state of production and shifts across the levels as the characters navigate it. By contrast, the world of The Matrix, 1999, is an authoritarian, computer-controlled one, alluding to theories of social control developed by thinkers Michel Foucault and Jean Baudrillard. However, according to one interpretation, Nolan's world has more in common with the works of Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari. David Denby in The New Yorker compared Nolan's cinematic treatment of dreams to Luis Buñuel's in Belle de Jour, 1967, and The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, 1972. He criticized Nolan's literal-minded, action-level sequencing compared to Buñuel, who silently pushed us into reveries and left us alone to enjoy our wonderment. But Nolan is working on so many levels of representation at once that he has to lay in pages of dialogue just to explain what's going on. The latter captures the peculiar malign intensity of actual dreams. Deirdre Barrett, a dream researcher at Harvard University, said that Nolan did not get every detail accurate regarding dreams, but their illogical, rambling, disjointed plots would not make for a great thriller anyway. However, he did get many aspects right, she said, citing the scene in which a sleeping Cobb is shoved into a full bath, and in the dream world, water gushes into the windows of the building, waking him up. That's very much how real stimuli get incorporated, and you very often wake up right after that intrusion. Nolan himself said, "I tried to work that idea of manipulation and management of a conscious dream being a skill that these people have." Really, the script is based on those common, very basic experiences and concepts, and where can those take you? And the only outlandish idea that the film presents, really, is the existence of a technology that allows you to enter and share the same dream as someone else. Dreams and cinema. Others have argued that the film is itself a metaphor for filmmaking, and that the film-going experience itself, images flashing before one's eyes in a darkened room, is akin to a dream. Writing in Wired, Jonah Lehrer supported this interpretation and presented neurological evidence that brain activity is strikingly similar during film watching and sleeping. In both, the visual cortex is highly active, and the prefrontal cortex, which deals with logic, deliberate analysis, and self-awareness, is quiet. Paul argued that the experience of going to a picture house is itself an exercise in shared dreaming, particularly when viewing Inception. The film's sharp cutting between scenes forces the viewer to create larger narrative arcs to stitch the pieces together. This demand of production, parallel to consumption of the images on the part of the audience, is analogous to dreaming itself. As in the film's story, in a cinema, one enters into the space of another's dream, in this case Nolan's. As with any work of art, one's reading of it is ultimately influenced by one's own subjective desires and subconscious thinking. At Bir Hakeim Bridge in Paris, Ariadne creates an illusion of infinity by adding facing mirrors underneath its struts. Stephanie Dreyfus in La Croix asked, "Is this not a strong, beautiful metaphor for the cinema and its power of illusion?" Cinematic technique. See also, cinematic style of Christopher Nolan. Genre. Nolan combined elements from several different film genres into the film, notably science fiction, heist film, and film noir. Marion Cotillard plays Mal Cobb, Dom Cobb's projection of his guilt over his deceased wife's suicide. As the film's main antagonist, she is a frequent, malevolent presence in his dreams. Dom is unable to control these projections of her, challenging his abilities as an extractor. Nolan described Mal as the essence of the femme fatale, a key noir reference in the film. As a classic femme fatale, her relationship with Cobb is in his mind, a manifestation of Cobb's own neurosis and fear of how little he knows about the woman he loves. DiCaprio praised Cotillard's performance, saying that she can be strong and vulnerable and hopeful and heartbreaking all in the same moment, which was perfect for all the contradictions of her character. Nolan began with the structure of a heist movie, since exposition is an essential element of that genre, though adapted it to have a greater emotional narrative suited to the world of dreams and subconscious. As Demby described this device, the outer shell of the story is an elaborate caper. Kristen Thompson argued that exposition was a major formal device in the film. While a traditional heist movie has a heavy dose of exposition at the beginning as the team assembles and the leader explains the plan, in Inception, this becomes nearly continuous as the group progresses through the various levels of dreaming. 3/4 of the film, until the van begins to fall from the bridge, are devoted to explaining its plot. In this way, exposition takes precedence over characterization. The characters' relationships are created by their respective skills and roles. Ariadne, like her ancient namesake, creates the maze and guides the others through it, but also helps Cobb navigate his own subconscious, and as the sole student of dream sharing, helps the audience understand the concept of the plot. Nolan drew inspiration from the works of Jorge Luis Borges, including The Secret Miracle and The Circular Ruins, and from the films Blade Runner, 1982, and The Matrix, 1999. While Nolan has not confirmed this, it has also been suggested by many observers that the movie draws heavy inspiration from the 2006 animated film Paprika. Ending. The film cuts to the closing credits from a shot of the top, apparently starting to show an ever-so-faint wobble, inviting speculation about whether the final sequence was reality or another dream. Nolan confirmed that the ambiguity was deliberate, saying, "I've been asked the question more times than I've ever been asked any other question about any other film I've made. What's funny to me is that people really do expect me to answer it." The film's script concludes with, "Behind him, on the table, the spinning top is still spinning, and we fade out." Nolan said, "I put that cut there at the end, imposing an ambiguity from outside the film. That always felt the right ending to me. It always felt like the appropriate kick to me. The real point of the scene, and this is what I tell people, is that Cobb isn't looking at the top. He's looking at his kids. He's left it behind. That's the emotional significance of the thing." Kane interpreted the ending as meaning that Cobb is in the real world, quoting Nolan as telling him, "Well, when you're in the scene, it's reality. So get that if I'm in it, it's reality. If I'm not in it, it's a dream." While reiterating that he was uncomfortable with definitively explaining the scene, Nolan in 2023 credited Emma Thomas as providing the correct answer, which is Leo's character doesn't care at that point. Mark Fisher argued that a century of cultural theory cautions against accepting the author's interpretation as anything more than a supplementary text, and this all the more so given the theme of the instability of any one master position in Nolan's films. Therein, the manipulator is often the one who ends up manipulated, and Cobb's not caring about whether or not his world is real may be the price of his happiness and release. Release. Marketing. Warner Bros. Spent $100 million marketing the film. Although Inception was not part of an existing franchise, Sue Kroll, president of Warner's worldwide marketing, said the company believed it could gain awareness due to the strength of Christopher Nolan as a brand. Kroll declared that, "We don't have the brand equity that usually drives a big summer opening, but we have a great cast and a fresh idea from a filmmaker with a track record of making incredible movies. If you can't make those elements work, it's a sad day." The studio also tried to maintain a campaign of secrecy, as reported by the senior VP of Interactive Marketing, Michael Tritter. "You have this movie which is going to have a pretty big built-in fan base, but you also have a movie that you are trying to keep very secret. Chris Nolan really likes people to see his movies in a theater and not see it all beforehand, so everything that you do to market that, at least early on, is with an eye to feeding the interest to fans." A viral marketing campaign was employed for the film. After the revelation of the first teaser trailer in August 2009, the film's official website featured only an animation of Cobb's spinning top. In December, the top toppled over and the website opened the online game Mindcrime, which upon completion revealed Inception's poster. The rest of the campaign unrolled after WonderCon in April 2010, where Warner gave away promotional t-shirts featuring the passive briefcase used to create the dream space, and had a QR code linking to an online manual of the device. Mindcrime also received a Stage 2 with more resources, including a hidden trailer for the movie. More pieces of viral marketing began to surface before Inception's release, such as a manual filled with bizarre images and text sent to Wired magazine, and the online publication of posters, ads, phone applications, and strange websites all related to the film. Warner also released an online prequel comic, Inception, The Cobalt Job. The official trailer, released on May 10, 2010, through Mindgame, was extremely well received. It featured an original piece of music, Mind Heist, by recording artist Zach Hemsey, rather than music from the score. The trailer quickly went viral, with numerous mashups copying its style, both by amateurs on sites like YouTube and by professionals on sites such as College Humor. On June 7, 2010, a behind-the-scenes featurette on the film, was released in HD on Yahoo Movies. Inception and its film trailers are widely credited for launching the trend throughout the 2010s, in which blockbuster movie trailers repeatedly hit audiences with so-called bram sounds, bassy, brassy, thunderous notes, like a foghorn on steroids, meant to impart a sense of apocalyptic momentousness. However, different composers worked on the teaser trailer, first trailer, second trailer, and film score, meaning that identifying the composer as responsible for that trend is a complicated task. Home media. Inception was released on DVD and Blu-ray on December 3, 2010, in France, and the week after in the United Kingdom and United States, December 7, 2010. The film was released on VHS in South Korea, making it one of the last major studio films released for the format. Warner Bros. Also made available in the United States a limited Blu-ray edition packaged in a metal replica of the passive briefcase, which included extras such as a metal replica of the spinning top totem. With a production run of less than 2,000, it sold out in one weekend. Inception was released on 4K Blu-ray and digital copy, along with other Christopher Nolan films on December 19, 2017. As of 2018, the home video releases have sold over 9 million units and grossed over $160 million. Putative video game. In a November 2010 interview, Nolan expressed his intention to develop a video game set in the Inception world, working with a team of collaborators. He described it as a longer-term proposition, referring to the medium of video games as something I've wanted to explore. 10th Anniversary Re-Release. Inception was re-released in theaters for its 10th anniversary, starting on August 12, 2020, in international markets and on August 21st in the US. The re-release was originally announced by Warner Bros. In June 2020 and scheduled for July 17, 2020, taking the original release date for Nolan's upcoming film Tenet after its delay to July 31st due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on movie theaters. After Tenet was delayed again to August 12th, the re-release was shifted to July 31st before setting on the August release date following a third delay. Inception was released in both conventional and IMAX theaters on July 16, 2010. The film had its world premiere at Leicester Square in London on July 8, 2010. In the United States and Canada, Inception was released theatrically in 3,792 conventional theaters and 195 IMAX theaters. The film grossed $21.8 million during its opening day on July 16, 2010, with midnight screenings in 1,500 locations. Overall, the film made $62.7 million and debuted at number 1 on its opening weekend. Inception's opening weekend gross made it the second highest grossing debut for a science fiction film that was not a sequel, remake, or adaptation, behind Avatar's $77 million opening weekend gross in 2009. The film held the top spot of the box office rankings in its second and third weekends, with drops of just 32%, $42.7 million, and 36%, $27.5 million, respectively, before dropping to second place in its fourth week, behind The Other Guys. Inception initially grossed $292 million in the United States and Canada, $56 million in the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Malta, and $479 million in other countries for a total of US $828 million worldwide. Its 5 highest grossing markets after the US and Canada, $292 million, were China, $68 million, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Malta, $56 million, France and the Maghreb region, $43 million, Japan, $40 million, and South Korea, $38 million. It was the 6th highest grossing film of 2010 in North America, and the 4th highest grossing film of 2010, behind Toy Story 3, Alice in Wonderland, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Its subsequent re-releases increased its gross to $139 million. Inception is the 4th most lucrative production in Christopher Nolan's career, behind The Dark Knight Rises, and Oppenheimer, and the second most for Leonardo DiCaprio, behind Titanic. Critical response. On Rotten Tomatoes, Inception holds an approval rating of 87% based on 368 reviews, with an average rating of 8.2/10. The website's critical consensus reads, "Smart, innovative, and thrilling, Inception is that rare summer blockbuster that succeeds viscerally as well as intellectually." Metacritic, another review aggregator, assigned the film a weighted average score of 74 out of 100, based on 42 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone called Inception a wildly ingenious chess game and concluded the result is a knockout. Justin Chang of Variety praised the film as a conceptual tour de force and wrote, "Applying a vivid sense of procedural detail to a fiendishly intricate yarn set in the labyrinth of the unconscious mind, the writer-director has devised a heist thriller for surrealists, a Jungian's rififi that challenges viewers to sift through multiple layers of unreality." Jim Vejvoda of IGN rated the film as perfect, deeming it a singular accomplishment from a filmmaker who has only gotten better with each film. Relevance David Rourke called it Nolan's greatest accomplishment, saying, "Visually, intellectually, and emotionally, Inception is a masterpiece." In its August 2010 issue, Empire gave the film a full 5 stars and wrote, "It feels like Stanley Kubrick adapting the work of the great sci-fi author William Gibson. Nolan delivers another true original, welcome to an undiscovered country." Entertainment Weekly's Lisa Schwartzbaum gave the film a B+ grade and wrote, "It's a rolling explosion of images as hypnotizing and sharply angled as any in a drawing by M.C. Escher or a state-of-the-biz video game. The backward splicing of Nolan's own Memento looks rudimentary by comparison." Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times awarded the film a full 4 stars and said that Inception is all about process, about fighting our way through enveloping sheets of reality and dream, reality within dreams, dreams without reality. It's a breathtaking juggling act. Richard Roper, also of the Sun-Times, gave Inception an A+ score and called it one of the best movies of the century. BBC Radio 5 Live's Mark Kermode named Inception as the best film of 2010, stating that, "Inception is proof that people are not stupid, that cinema is not trash, and that it is possible for blockbusters and art to be the same thing." Michael Phillips of the Chicago Tribune gave the film 3 out of 4 stars and wrote, "I found myself wishing Inception were weirder. Further out, the film is Nolan's Labyrinth all the way, and it's gratifying to experience a summer movie with large visual ambitions and with nothing more or less on its mind than, as Shakespeare said, a dream that hath no bottom." Times' Richard Corliss wrote that the film's noble intent is to implant one man's vision in the mind of a vast audience. The idea of movie-going as communal dreaming is a century old. With Inception, viewers have a chance to see that notion get a state-of-the-art update. Kenneth Turan of the Los Angeles Times felt that Nolan was able to blend the best of traditional and modern filmmaking. If you're searching for smart and nervy popular entertainment, this is what it looks like. USA Today's Claudia Puig gave the film 3.5 out of 4 stars and felt that Nolan regards his viewers as possibly smarter than they are, or at least as capable of rising to his inventive level. That's a tall order, but it's refreshing to find a director who makes us stretch, even occasionally struggle, to keep up. Not all reviewers gave the film positive reviews. New York Magazine's David Edelstein said in his review that he had no idea what so many people are raving about. It's as if someone went into their heads while they were sleeping and planted the idea that Inception is a visionary masterpiece. And hold on. Whoa, I think I get it. The movie is a metaphor for the power of delusional hype, a metaphor for itself. The New York Observer's Rex Reed said the film's development was pretty much what we've come to expect from summer movies in general, and Christopher Nolan movies in particular. It doesn't seem like much of an accomplishment to me. A.O. Scott of the New York Times commented, "There is a lot to see in Inception. There is nothing that counts as genuine vision. Mr. Nolan's idea of the mind is too literal, too logical, and too rule-bound to allow the full measure of madness." The New Yorker's David Denby considered the film to be not nearly as much fun as Nolan imagined it to be, concluding that Inception is a stunning-looking film that gets lost in fabulous intricacies, a movie devoted to its own workings and to little else. While some critics have tended to view the film as perfectly straightforward and even criticize its overarching themes as the stuff of torpid platitudes, online discussion has been much more positive. Heated debate has centered on the ambiguity of the ending, with many critics like Devin Ferrazzi making the case that the film is self-referential and tongue-in-cheek, both a film about filmmaking and a dream about dreams. Other critics read Inception as Christian allegory and focus on the film's use of religious and water symbolism. Yet other critics, such as Kristen Thompson, see less value in the ambiguous ending of the film and more in its structure and novel method of storytelling, highlighting Inception as a new form of narrative that revels in continuous exposition. Several critics and scholars have noted the film has many striking similarities to the 2006 anime film Paprika by Satoshi Kon and Yasutaka Tsutsui's 1993 novel of the same name, including plot similarities, similar scenes, and similar characters, arguing that Inception was influenced by Paprika. Several sources have also noted plot similarities between the film and the 2002 Uncle Scrooge comic The Dream of a Lifetime by Don Rosa. The influence of Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris on Inception was noted as well. Year-end and all-time lists. Inception appeared on over 273 critics' lists of the top 10 films of 2010, being picked as number 1 on at least 55 of those lists. It was the second most mentioned film in both the top 10 lists and number 1 rankings, only behind The Social Network, along with Toy Story 3, True Grit, The King's Speech, and Black Swan as the most critically acclaimed films of 2010. Author Stephen King placed Inception at number 3 in his list of top 10 best films of the year. Filmmaker Denis Villeneuve cited it as among his favorite films of all time. In 2025, the film ranked number 55 on the New York Times list of the 100 best movies of the 21st century and number 24 on the Reader's Choice edition of the list. Critics and publications who ranked the film first for that year included Richard Roeper of the Chicago Sun-Times, Kenneth Turin of the Los Angeles Times, tied with The Social Network and Toy Story 3, Tasha Robinson of the AV Club, Empire Magazine, and Kirk Honeycutt of The Hollywood Reporter. In March 2011, the film was voted by BBC Radio 1 and BBC Radio 1 Extra listeners as their 9th favorite film of all time. Producer Roger Corman cited Inception as an example of great imagination and originality. In 2012, Inception was ranked the 35th best edited film of all time by the Motion Picture Editors Guild. In the same year, Total Film named it the most rewatchable movie of all time. In 2014, Empire ranked Inception the 10th greatest film ever made on their list of the 301 greatest movies of all time, as voted by the magazine's readers, while Rolling Stone magazine named it the second best science fiction film since the turn of the century. Inception was ranked 84th on Hollywood's 100 favorite films, a list compiled by The Hollywood Reporter in 2014, surveying studio chiefs, Oscar winners, and TV royalty. In 2016, Inception was voted the 51st best film of the 21st century by BBC, as picked by 177 film critics from around the world. The film was included in the Visual Effects Society's list of the most influential visual effects films of all time. In 2019, Total Film named Inception the best film of the 2010s. Many critics and media outlets included Inception in their rankings of the best films of the 2010s. The film was included in Forbes magazine's list of top 150 greatest films of 21st century. In April 2014, The Daily Telegraph placed the title on its top 10 list of the most overrated films. Telegraph's Tim Robbie stated, "It's a criminal failing of the movie that it purports to be about people's dreams being invaded, but demonstrates no instinct at all for what a dream has ever felt like, and no flair for making us feel like we're in one at any point." The film won an informal poll by the Los Angeles Times as the most overrated movie of 2010. Accolade. Main article, list of accolades received by Inception. The film won many awards in technical categories, such as Academy Awards for Best Cinematography, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects, and the British Academy Film Awards for Best Production Design, Best Special Visual Effects, and Best Sound. In most of its artistic nominations, such as film, director, and screenplay at the Oscars, BAFTAs, and Golden Globes, the film was defeated by The Social Network or The King's Speech. However, the film did win the two highest honors for a science fiction or fantasy film: the 2011 Bradbury Award for Best Dramatic Production, 160, and the 2011 Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation, long form. In popular culture, numerous pop and hip-hop songs reference the film, including Common's Blue Sky, NRD's Hypnotize You, XV's The Kick, Black Eyed Peas' Just Can't Get Enough, Lil Wayne's 6 Foot 7 Foot, Jennifer Lopez's On the Floor, and B.O.B.'s Strange Clouds, while T.I. had Inception-based artwork on two of his mixtapes. An instrumental track by Joe Budden is titled Inception. The animated series South Park parodies the film in the show's 10th episode of its 14th season, titled Inception. The film was also an influence for Ariana Grande's video for No Tears Left to Cry. Lawnmower Dog, the second episode of the animated comedy show Rick and Morty, parodied the film. In an episode of The Simpsons named How I Wet Your Mother, the plot spoofs Inception with various scenes parodying moments from the film. The showrunners of the television series The Flash said its season 4 finale was inspired by Inception. In February 2020, American singer-songwriter Taylor Swift released a lyric video for her single, The Man, which featured visuals bearing resemblance to the film. The song also mentions DiCaprio in its lyrics. The film's title has been colloquialized as the suffix "ception," which can be jokingly appended to a noun to indicate a layering, nesting, or recursion of the thing in question. It's said that Christopher Nolan spent 10 years writing his screenplay for Inception. That must have involved prodigious concentration, like playing blindfold chess while walking a tight wire. The film's hero tests a young architect by challenging her to create a maze, and Nolan tests us with his own dazzling maze. We have to trust him that he can lead us through, because much of the time we're lost and disoriented. Nolan must have rewritten this story time and again, finding that every change had a ripple effect down through the whole fabric. The story can either be told in a few sentences or not told at all. Here is a movie immune to spoilers. If you knew how it ended, that would tell you nothing unless you knew how it got there, and telling you how it got there would produce bafflement. The movie is all about process, about fighting our way through enveloping sheets of reality and dream, reality within dreams, dreams without reality. It's a breathtaking juggling act, and Nolan may have considered his Memento 2000 a warm-up. He apparently started this screenplay while filming that one. It was the story of a man with short-term memory loss, and the story was told backwards. Like the hero of that film, the viewer of Inception is adrift in time and experience. We can never even be quite sure what the relationship between dream time and real time is. The hero explains that you can never remember the beginning of a dream, and that dreams that seem to cover hours may only last a short time. Yes, but you don't know that when you're dreaming. And what if you're inside another man's dream? How does your dream time sync with his? What do you really know? Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio, is a corporate raider of the highest order. He infiltrates the minds of other men to steal their ideas. Now he is hired by a powerful billionaire to do the opposite, to introduce an idea into a rival's mind and do it so well he believes it is his own. This has never been done before. Our minds are as alert to foreign ideas as our immune system is to pathogens. The rich man, named Saito, Ken Watanabe, makes him an offer he can't refuse, an offer that would end Cobb's forced exile from home and family. Cobb assembles a team, and here the movie relies on the well-established procedures of all heist movies. We meet the people he will need to work with: Arthur, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, his longtime associate; Eames, Tom Hardy, a master at deception; Yusuf, Dilip Rao, a master chemist. And there is a new recruit, Ariadne, Ellen Page, a brilliant young architect who is a prodigy at creating spaces. Cobb also goes to touch base with his father-in-law Miles, Michael Caine, who knows what he does and how he does it. These days, Michael Caine need only appear on a screen, and we assume he's wiser than any of the other characters. It's a gift. But wait, Why does Cobb need an architect to create spaces in dreams? He explains to her, dreams have a shifting architecture, as we all know. Where we seem to be has a way of shifting. Cobb's assignment is the inception, or birth, or wellspring of a new idea in the mind of another young billionaire, Robert Fisher Jr., Cillian Murphy, heir to his father's empire. Saito wants him to initiate ideas that will lead to the surrender of his rival's corporation. Cobb needs Ariadne to create a deceptive maze space in Fisher's dreams so that I think new thoughts can slip in unperceived. Is it a coincidence that Ariadne is named for the woman in Greek mythology who helped Theseus escape from the Minotaur's labyrinth? Cobb tutors Ariadne on the world of dream infiltration, the art of controlling dreams and navigating them. Nolan uses this as a device for tutoring us as well, and also as the occasion for some of the movie's astonishing special effects, which seemed senseless in the trailer, but now fit right in. The most impressive to me takes place, or seems to, in Paris, where the city literally rolls back on itself like a roll of linoleum tile. Protecting Fisher are any number of gun-wielding bodyguards who may be working like the mental equivalent of antibodies. They seem alternatively real and figurative, but whichever they are, they lead to a great many gunfights, chase scenes, and explosions, which is the way movies depict conflict these days. So skilled is Nolan that he actually got me involved in one of his chases when I thought I was relatively immune to scenes that have become so standard. That was because I cared about who was chasing and being chased. If you've seen any advertising at all for the film, you know that its architecture has a way of disregarding gravity. Buildings tilt, streets coil, characters float. This is all explained in the narrative. The movie is a perplexing labyrinth without a simple through line, and is sure to inspire truly endless analysis on the web. Nolan helps us with an emotional thread. The reason Cobb is motivated to risk the dangers of Inception is because of grief and guilt involving his wife Mal, Marion Cotillard, and their 2 children. More I will not, in a way, cannot say. Cotillard beautifully embodies the wife in an idealized way. Whether we are seeing Cobb's memories or his dreams is difficult to say, even literally in the last shot. But she makes Mal function as an emotional magnet, and the love between the two provides an emotional constant in Cobb's world, which is otherwise ceaselessly shifting. Inception works for the viewer, in a way like the world itself worked for Leonard, the hero of Memento. We are always in the now. We have made some notes while getting here, but we are not quite sure where here is. Yet matters of life, death, and the heart are involved. Oh, and those multinational corporations, of course. And Nolan doesn't pause before using well-crafted scenes from spycraft or espionage, including a clever scheme on board a 747, even explaining why it must be a 747. The movies often seem to come from the recycling bin these days. Sequels, remakes, franchises. Inception does a difficult thing. It is wholly original, cut from new cloth, and yet structured with action movie basics, so it feels like it makes more sense than, quite possibly, it does. I thought there was a hole in Memento. How does a man with short-term memory loss remember he has short-term memory loss? Maybe there's a hole in Inception too, but I can't find it. Christopher Nolan reinvented Batman. This time, he isn't reinventing anything, yet few directors will attempt to recycle Inception. I think when Nolan left the labyrinth, he threw away the map. With Christopher Nolan's new film Tenet doomed to arrive like Achilles racing the tortoise in Zeno's paradox, approaching and approaching, forever closing the gap, but never quite here, it is an interesting time for his adored cerebrotech thriller Inception to get a re-release on streaming platforms. It's a measure of Nolan's towering prestige that a film made a mere 10 years ago can be eligible for classic reassessment status. But there's also something disconcerting about it. Rightly or wrongly, Nolan fans and the industry generally had been encouraged to believe in Tenet as the morale-boosting new dawn for post-COVID theatrical life, the flagship for cinema as challenging, spectacular entertainment. So inevitably, it looks as if Inception is somehow being offered as second best, or as a warm-up act hustled hastily on stage to keep the audience quiet because the similar main event is still stuck in traffic miles away. Well, Inception is still very impressive, Looking back, I see that I found its tech and technique dazzling, but the narrative inert. Yet maybe that was not doing justice to how staggering its fantasy set pieces were. Leonardo DiCaprio plays a brain hacker of the future called Cobb, an industrial espionage mercenary who specializes in invading plutocrats' dreaming minds to steal commercially sensitive information. He builds detailed, complex imaginary worlds to seduce the dreamers into letting their subconscious guards down with the help of a super cool crew of forgers: Eames, Tom Hardy, Ariadne, Ellen Page, and Arthur Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Now, a Japanese CEO, Saito, Ken Watanabe, wants to hire Cobb to implant a destructive idea inside the head of a rival, Fisher, Cillian Murphy. To do it, Cobb devises a triple-decker dream, a dream within a dream within a dream. But the memory of his late wife Mal, Marion Cotillard, will keep invading this synapse world. For me, despite all the Kubrickian brilliance that Nolan often conjures, there is frequent narrative claustrophobia, and I still think that it is only at the level of waking life that real drama and jeopardy exist. But those imagined worlds are breathtaking, and in the decades since Inception came out, I've seen nothing else come close. It is impossible not to gasp when Cobb takes Ariadne for coffee in Paris, and then shows her how malleable and adaptable an imagined city can be. As for DiCaprio, it is a slight shame that Nolan can't release in him the comic mischief and vulnerability that Scorsese and Tarantino know how to find, but that, arguably, isn't the point here. It is a thriller, and DiCaprio is the film's sleekest and sexiest piece of kit. Watching this, I found myself realizing how much I've missed seeing Page in the top flight of movies over the past decade, and also noticing how Hardy can sometimes look as pudgy as some bloke in a pub, and sometimes snap mysteriously into shape, athletic as a future Bond. With this film, Nolan virtually reinvented virtual reality. They just turn in performances that fit so well, they blend in like pieces of the set or entities of the world already. Hardy and Gordon-Levitt, however, have a fun rivalry and deliver the most powerful action sequences. And I must say, I was impressed by JGL's ability to hold his own in this film. I wasn't sure if he would be able to, but in the end, it's DiCaprio's Cobb who opens and closes the emotional arc of the story. The man with the problem who seeks to solve it in the end, and that's the killer for many audiences at the end. What does it mean? Does the top keep spinning or does it fall? I laughed like many others in the theater when that last shot cut off, but I think it was out of expectation. How else can you end that film? It doesn't seem fair to give an answer that is so entirely inconclusive. There is one theory I have heard read that I quite liked, that the end of the film, or the entire film, is Inception itself. Fane Nolan takes us on a 2.5-hour journey to set up that last shot and cut it off, therefore placing the idea in our mind that reality might not be real at all. Perhaps this is a dream. Perhaps Mel was right, and enlightenment comes from waking up. And while I certainly think that Nolan planned to plant sad ideas in the minds, I don't think the ending serves this sole purpose. For myself, I think the ending and the last shot are never meant to go on. The top neither falls, nor does it keep on spinning. It is what it is, a forever questionable. The statement Nolan makes by ending the film where it ends is to say that the question of reality versus dreaming of the psychological mind versus the physical world, it can never be answered. It's a question that nobody can answer. And we're meant to ask it until each individual person can conclude with some confidence their own interpretation. You can side with Mole, who claims that death will enlighten us to reality. And perhaps she is right. Perhaps death in this world brings us into a higher reality of the next. Or Cobb could be right that this is it. Reality is now, and death brings absolution to that. But can we know? Will we ever know? We're not able to. And neither is Nolan. He simply wants to present both sides of it to the audience and give them a hint of what it could be. His job as an artist was never to answer these questions, but ask them. Himself, provide some greater insight, and leave the tools of thought in the mind of the viewer. If there is one thing this film has going for it, it is the ability for audiences to remain with the film long after walking out of the theater. The themes, the action, and certainly the strong visuals of this cinematic experience hang with them. Word of mouth has been strong, and as Inception and Nolan has proven once again that he can bring art house storytelling to the blockbuster genre, that stories don't have to be based on existing properties, and that there are sparks of originality that still exist. And while I don't think the film is completely mind-blowing or mind-bending as many have claimed, after all, Descartes lived hundreds of years ago, I do think the movie presents an amount of intellectualism to Hollywood that has been missing in the majority of films since the French New Wave inspired a new generation of filmmakers in the 1970s. When all is said and done, Inception is a film that provides great fun, eye-wrenching thoughts, and questions the audience to think more about their surroundings. Is it perfect? It's hard to say. Films can rarely be fairly evaluated without the test of time. But history says no film ever is perfect, but it certainly is great. It certainly is the biggest combination of action and philosophy since The Matrix changed the fine game in 1999. Inception is no different. It is sure to set the bar even higher for what audiences expect from big-time directors playing with big-time money and fancy. The set wasn't even in 3D. My mind is blown. It is just not quite as blown as I was expecting it to. I blame myself. I think not only like a critic, but like a writer of fiction. I see a crazy-ass idea up on the screen in the opening moments of a film, and I can't help but think, what would I do if I'd had that crazy-ass idea first? Where would I take it? And I think not only like a critic, but like a crazy-ass person who simply loves movies with such a passion that I've seen an unhealthy number of them and read too many novels, too. I see the checks gun on the mental piece, even when a filmmaker goes out of the way to disguise it. And the thing is, I'm not sure Christopher Nolan goes out of his way to disguise his Chekhov's guns here. Check out gun. You know, if someone's going to get shot in Act 3, there better be a gun on the mandel in Act 1. And if there's a gun on the mandel in Act 1, someone sure as hell better get shot with it in Act 3. Good writers hide their check guns. Well, I'm not sure if Nolan has done that here. It's like this. Whether you know what goes into crafting a story because you've crafted stories yourself or because you've just seen so many of them that you've internalized the structure, sometimes it's hard not to see the man behind the curtain, the puppet strings making it move, the underpinnings holding it all up. It sounds like I'm being hard on Nolan, and I guess I am. I expect a hell of a lot from him. A Memento will surely go down in cinematic history as one of the most astonishing movies ever made. It's a hard act to follow. Nolan's done pretty damn well following himself, and he has done it again here mostly. If there's one major flaw here, it's that Inception is more satisfying on an intellectual level than on an emotional one. Not that I'm really complaining about that. For here is a big-budget studio summer blockbuster that's about ideas. This is a rare thing, and this rare thing is thrilling. Thank you, without being stuffy. Smart as if being smart was the easiest, most natural thing in the world, which is truly exceptional when Hollywood appears intent on going out of its way to dumb everything down these days. And when I say this is a movie about ideas, I do mean ideas of themselves. How ideas are just someone whispering something to you in the right way at the right time. They can have a crude, subtle power like nothing else. How ideas can change us to our very core. Nolan the Dark Knight at a prestige drops in little think bombs here about the raw, infinite subconscious and how true inspiration is impossible to fake your broken bar. And then he goes about plumbing the depths of subconscious infinity and faking true inspiration. Inception is stunningly brilliant in how it does what it does. Even if what it does isn't quite as grand in scope as I might have expected, they hoped even from Nolan. So meet Cobb Leonardo DiCaprio, a Shutter Island, a body of lies. He can get in your head and steal your thoughts. It's not exactly the most legal kind of work, and he's ready to get out. Inception is the most audacious example of the one last job heist K-pod, made even more audacious by dint of the spin on this last job. Cobb is hired not to steal an idea, but to plant one, hired to do an inception rather than an extraction. It is explained to us a vastly harder thing to do. Working with Cobb are a fascinating team of idea stealers. most prominently Joseph Gordon-Levitt's G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, A Women in Trouble, Arthur Ellen Page's Whippet, A Juno Ariadne, and Tom Hardy's Roa Ems. Watching these four bounce off one another leaves you with the exhilarating sense that if this is the future of the movies, if these are the faces and the talents we are going to be seeing for the next 30 years on screen, that is a very good thing indeed. Nolan is at his most beguiling here, playing with, in the meta sense, movies as dreams messing with the physics of narrative time, reminding us on multiple levels that movies are not to be trusted beyond our experience in the moment of them as we are watching them, that they are fleeting dreamscapes that begin mine. We never do remember how a dream starts, do we? We just start remembering in the middle of a dream and often end by leaving us hungry to know more, as if we awaken just prior to a resolution. Nolan's tweaking of narrative time makes watching the Inception like falling into a black hole. Time is relativistic here, slowing down the closer we get to the event horizon of the movie, and that event horizon is forever out of reach. You never ever stop a falling into a black hole, a broken bar. If I'm feeling just the teensiest, wensiest bit of disappointment that I can't feel a more for Inception, I am at least comforted by the fact that I am absolutely going to be thinking about it endlessly for days, and then I'm going to see it again in an attempt to get to that event horizon. However impossible that may be, I won't be able to go into a lengthy discussion of this movie, not because I don't want to, but simply because I can't. The truth is that one viewing is not enough to fully understand the terminology, rules, and exceptions of the intricate plot, one which is set in the world of subconscious. Christopher Nolan has crafted a multi-layered story, a dream within a dream within a dream, and so on. A word of caution. If you do not pay careful attention during the movie, it is possible that you may get lost yourself at any point as to which of the characters' dream you are in. I wouldn't also want to spoil it by going into details, especially if you have not watched the movie. Here is a brief summary. However, Damn Cobb, acted by Leonardo DiCaprio, has the rare skill of stealing valuable secrets from the depths of his subject's subconscious. His ability made him a coveted player in this treacherous new world of corporate espionage. At the same time, it has also made him a fugitive from his own country. He was offered a last chance to return home. The job required him to accomplish the impossibly Inception. Dom Cobb and his team had to do it differently this time, though instead of stealing an idea, he was to plant one. Although the team tried to put in careful planning, they were not fully prepared for everything that turned up. There were lots of scenes that I liked from the movie. I enjoyed how the deep, architectural marvels sprang to life, the collapsing of dreams, the ling of one room to another. Then fears could multiply like mental viruses, and how unlocking the darkest secret was like accessing a hidden vault. Clearly, the movie bears the creative stroke of genius. One of the best movie lines has it that a broken bar, even from one... The movie resonates deeply. It offers a lot of what I often share on this blog, the power of the subconscious mind. Please subscribe to receive my emails if you have not. A dream's an alternate reality, addressing fears, a imagination, a confessing secrets, and so, if you are interested to know what my dream on Sunday morning is about, read on. My dream was constructed from the setting of a past memory, but explored the possibility of a future day. I could see myself clearly wearing a corporate suit. It was my first day back at work in a 9-to-5 job in the bank. I was assigned to the customer service section. While I was welcomed back with open arms of my colleagues, I had to face the wrath of a demanding, wet, female boss. All the characters were none of the people I knew in real life. My dream was being populated with people of my imagination. In the dream, I tried to steady myself in the effort of not going into a panic. I was getting anxious. I was being asked to handle a simple funds transfer for a wealthy, Nigerian customer by my boss. Pride prevented me from being truthful. I was reluctant to tell her that I have forgotten how to fill up the bank transfer form. In my dream, I went into inner talk. I told myself that it was not that I did not have the knowledge. It was because I had forgotten how to after being away from the banking field for so long. I reasoned that if I retrieve the archives of my banking knowledge, which is stored in the deep recesses of my mind. That was when an inner message surfaced. Fears are more imaginary than real. The lesson was not to blow my fears out of proportion. While you may dismiss the so-called message as nothing profound, allow me to put forth the suggestion that learning, on a subconscious level, cuts much deeper. It is not the same from knowing things at a conscious level. An idea in your subconscious can rewrite all your rules of living. As Cobb in Inception puts it, Cobb knew that when dreams are built on the past, they would be about confronting fears. He was afraid, and so he cautioned at the broken bar. Eventually, he found that as much as he tried not to recreate from memory, it was an impossible task at the deepest layers of the subconscious. My personal experience, I have been both fascinated and tortured by some of my dreams for a long time. There was a period in time when I suffered badly from insomnia and the inability to fall back to sleep easily after waking up in the middle of the night. My fears were accumulating sky high at the subconscious level. With no outlet for release, they were bursting at the seams. Eventually, they were appearing in several bad dreams for me. I would wake up with a sense of dread. Luckily, with repeated inner work, my anxiety has subsided substantially. I have been sleeping more fitfully in recent years. 1. Inception is a movie about exploring your subconscious. It is about confronting your worst enemy, a fear, which is a construct of your imaginary mind. At the same time, it is about venturing into possibilities. There is no denying that much power rests with your ability to manage your subconscious well. 2. Do not be scared off by reports of the movie's complicated story. You should not miss it. If you are a personal development student learning about the powers of the subconscious, then this movie is a must-watch. Inception is one of the best movies I have seen since Matrix. I intend to watch it again. 3. To learn the art of remembering dreams and to plant ideas in your subconscious, all within the same program, look no further than the Isla Life System. Joel de Copyright Silva. August 11, 1914, a February 7, 1999, was a parapsychologist who helped people increase their IQ, develop psychic skills, and the ability to heal both themselves and others remotely through the subconscious. That this was the program that was instrumental in assisting Jack Canfield, Shakti Gawan, and Wayne Dyer in their early days of personal development. In fact, all of them, including several other famous personal development experts, say attested to having used the Silva programmer for years. A Silva's program has certainly helped in my journey as well, and I continue to use it. While some critics have tended to view the film as perfectly straightforward and even criticize its overarching themes as the stuff of torpid platitudes, online discussion has been much more positive. A heated debate has centered on the ambiguity of the ending, with many critics like Devin Farace making the case that the film is self-referential and tongue-in-cheek, both a film about filmmaking and a dream about dreams. Other critics read Inception as Christian allegory and focus on the film's use of religious and water symbolism. Yet other critics, such as Christ Tristan Thompson, see less value in the ambiguous ending of the film and more in its structure and novel method of storytelling, highlighting Inception as a new form of narrative that travels in continuous exposition. Several critics and scholars have noted the film has many striking similarities to the 2006 Anamea film of the Paka by Asatoshi and the Yao Takusatsui's 1993 novel of the same name, including plot similarities, similar scenes, and similar characters, arguing that Inception was influenced by Apocrypha. Several sources have also noted plot similarities between the film and the 2002 Uncle Scrooge, a comic of the dream of a lifetime via by Adon Rosa. The influence of F. and Rorofsky's Solar Risa, and as Inception was noted as well year-end and all-time lists. Inception appeared on over 273 critics' lists of the top 10 films of 2010, being picked as number 1 on at least 55 of those lists. It was the second most mentioned film in both the top 10 lists and number 1 rankings, only behind The Social Network, along with the Toy Story 3, A True Grit at the King's Speech, and The Black Swanna as the most critically acclaimed films of 2010. a author of Stephen King, place it at Inception at number 3 in his list of top 10 best films of the year. Filmmaker Denis Villeneuve cited it as among his favorite films of all time. In 2025, the film ranked number 55 in all the New York Times list of the 100 best movies of the 21st century and number 24 on the Reader Choice edition of the list. Critics and publications who ranked the film first for that year include Edita Richard Roa of the Chicago Sun-Times, a Kenneth Toronto of the Los Angeles Times, tied with The Social Network, and the Toy Story 3, Tasha Robinson of Fav Club AMI Magazine, and Kirk Hanukkah, Hollywood Reporter. In March 2011, the film was voted by ABC Radio 1A and WBC Radio 1's Trey listeners is their 9th favorite film of all time. A producer, Roger Corman, cited The Inception as an example of great imagination and originality. In 2012, Inception was ranked the 35th best edited film of all time by Thea Motion Picture Editors Guild. In the same year, a total film and named it the most rewatchable movie of all time. In 2014, Empire ranked The Inception of the 10th greatest film ever made on their list of the 301 greatest movies of all time, as voted by the magazine's readers. A Willie Rawlings Stoney magazine named it the second best science fiction film since the turn of the century. Inception will list compiled by at a Hollywood Reporter in 2014 surveying studio chiefs, Oscar winners and TV royalty. In 2016, Inception was voted the 51 Street Best Film of the 21st Century by Abub, as picked by 177 film critics from around the world. The film was included in the Visual Effects Society's list of the most influential visual effects films of all time. In 2019, Komodotal Film and Name of the Inception of the Best Film of the 2010 Domini critics and media outlets included Inception and their rankings of the best films of the 2010 that the film was included in A4 magazine's list of FATOP 150 Greatest Films of 21st Century in April 2014. At the Daily Telegraph, placed the title on its top 10 list of the most underrated aided films. At Telegraph's, Tim Roby stated, "It's a criminal failing of the movie that it purports to be about people's dreams being invaded, but demonstrates no instinct, at all for what a dream has ever felt like and no flair for making us feel like we're in one at any point." The film won an informal poll by the Los Angeles Times as the most underrated movie of 2010 accolades. The film won many awards in technical categories such as Academy Awards offer Best Cinematography, a Best Sound Editing, a Best Sound Mixing, and a Best Visual Effects, and the British Academy Film Awards are for a Best Production Design, a Best Special Visual Effect, and the Best Sound. In most of its artistic nominations, such as Film Director and Screenplay at the Oscars, Office, and the Golden Globes. The film was defeated by either Social Network or The King's Speech. However, the film did win the 2 highest honors for a science fiction or fantasy film: the 2011 Bradbury Award for Best Dramatic Production and the 2011 Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. Long form in popular culture. Numerous pop and hip-hop songs reference the film, including a Common's Blue Sky, a D's Hypnotize You, 15's The Kick, a Black Eyed Peas Just Can't Get Enough, a Lil Wayne, 6'7" Jennifer Lopez is on the Floor, and a B.O.'s Strange Clouds Bully T. Do I Do a Hot Inception-based artwork on 2 of his mixtapes, an instrumental track by Ade Badina is titled Inception. The animated series South Park parodies the film in the show's 10th episode of the 14th season, titled Enshai Pepian 163. The film was also an influence for Ariana Grande's video for No Tears Left to Cry, 164, A Lawnmower Dog, the 2nd episode of the animated comedy show, while Rick and Morty parodied the film. In an episode of Fa Simpsons named How I Wet Your Mother. The plot spoofs Inception with various scenes parodying moments from the film. 166. The showrunners of the television, Cessa the Flasher, said its season 4 finale was inspired by Inception. In February 2020. American singer, songwriter Ray Taylor Swift released a lyric video for her single The Man, which featured visuals bearing resemblance to the film. The song also mentions DiCaprio in its lyrics. After the release of Christopher Nolan's Inception back in 2010, I wrote a review on my earlier blog site praising the film. After several more viewings, I would continue to applaud this production, and it was easily my favorite film of that year. But as excited as I was over Inception, I still don't think my previous review did justice to what has become one of my favorite movies of all time. Yes, I said of all time. I still find Inception to be one of the most original and most ambitious movies I've ever seen. But ambition doesn't always equal a great movie. Inception not only aims high, but it succeeds in creating a brilliant and unique picture that's unlike anything I've seen. It's hard to pigeonhole Inception. It's a heist film, a tragic romance, science fiction, and an action film. But the best thing is it uses all of these ingredients flawlessly. The bulk of its success can be traced right back to Nolan. For my money, Christopher Nolan is one of our greatest working directors. He wrote, co-produced, and directed this film, and I truly believe he's one of the only visionary filmmakers who could have pulled this off. It took him almost 10 years to write and rewrite the script, and it took the huge success of The Dark Knight to secure the big budget needed to make Inception. But you sure can't argue with the results of the finished product. Inception ended its box office run, making over $825 million worldwide. The film stars Leonardo DiCaprio, an actor Nolan had wanted to work with for some time. He plays Damn Cobb, a dream thief for lack of a better title. He, along with his partner Arthur Joseph Gordon-Levitt, are paid to infiltrate the subconsciouses of their targets by their dreams and steal information. When the dream extraction from a wealthy Japanese businessman named Sato Ken Watanabe goes wrong, Cobb and Arthur find out they were being tested. Instead of extracting information, Sato wants them to attempt Inception on a business rival of his. The idea of Inception is that instead of stealing information, you plant it in the target's subconscious while they're dreaming. There are questions as to whether Inception is even possible, but Cobb is enticed to take the job when Sato promises to use his influence to clear Cobb's name of a mysterious murder charge that has kept him out of the United States and separated from his 2 children. To do the job, Cobb needs a top-notch team of experts. M's Tom Hardy is basically a forger, or probably better described as an impersonator. Once inside a dream, he has the ability to take on the identity of anyone. Ariadne Ellen Page is the architect. She is able to construct mental labyrinths inside the dreamer's subconscious. This is essential if the team is going to know their way around the dream. Yuzu, the lay is basically the team's pharmacist. He's the one who controls the sleep via his numerous concoctions. Sato also insists on going and keeping an eye on his investment. Nolan takes us through the formation of the team, bits of their training, and of course, their attempt at Inception. As the story moves forward, Nolan plays with our minds as he begins placing dreams within dreams, and he causes his audience to pay close attention as their well-planned heist encounters more complications. One thing I have always loved about a Christopher Nolan film is his ability to put together the perfect cast. This may be his best yet. DiCaprio has been a critic's darling with several of his performances, but I think this is one of his very best. Cobb knows his business, but he's a tortured man with loads of emotional baggage. Leo handles all of this perfectly. I also love Tom Hardy here, and he steals nearly every scene he's in. Ems is a confident wisecracker, and some of his best scenes are when he's giving Arthur a hard time. Speaking of Arthur, Gordon-Levitt gives another strong performance, and he has one particular action sequence that's one of the best I've ever seen. And then there's Ellen Page, who I liked as Ariadne. Her character is new to the dream scene, and she brings a needed sense of caution and reality to the mission. But there are some other great performances that are important to the story and worth mention. One of my favorites was Marion Killard as Mole. She has a special bond with Cobb and repeatedly appears within the dreams, potentially compromising the mission. Killard's performance is multi-layered and fascinating. Michael Caine, a Nolan favorite, is very good as Cobb's father-in-law and caregiver of his children. Cillian Murphy plays the team's central target for Inception, and he too is a great fit for his role. It was also great to see Tamber Andrew given a nice role to work with, and the great Peter Pusselwaite in what would be his last performance before his death due to pancreatic cancer. All of these performers are sharply in tune with the material, and the cast serves as just one of the movie's many high points. Nolan is also a visual filmmaker, and there is some incredibly Iconian Inception. The movie was filmed in locations all over the world, including Tokyo, Morocco, Paris, and Alberta. Each of these places have their own separate and distinct look and feel to them within the movie, whether they take place in reality or in a dream. This was an intentional move by Nolan, who wanted to place his film in the contemporary world while also playing with our perceptions of what is real and what's not. And of course, since we're talking about dreams, Nolan has a spectacular and diverse visual sandbox to play in. He wows us with several amazing special effects sequences that include rotating hotel rooms, trains barreling down big city boulevards, and a shootout at a fortified Arctic base. Inception hits you with one spectacular set piece after another, and all of this gels nicely with the movie's deep and layered story. Inceptionist and a movie with a straightforward by their books narrative. It's a film that requires you to pay attention, and I like that. I've talked with people who didn't care for the movie because of its complexities, and I can't help but be puzzled. So many movies are simple and formula genre films that never challenge their audiences in any way. For me, it's refreshing to have something completely original and fresh, and I appreciate how the film doesn't dump things down for the audience. I'm also amazed at just how well this complex story unwraps. Nolan constantly throws new kinks into his story to the point where I question whether he could bring it all together. But like a skilled and crafty pro, he pulls everything in during the last 20 minutes, right up to the beautiful final shot. And that final scene, well, it gets a little misty for me every single time. For me, everything in Inception works. The special effects, the action sequences, Nolan's phenomenal script, the incredible cast, Hans Zimmer's pulse-pounding score. This is why I go to the movies. There's nothing conventional about Inception, and there's no way to watch it and not appreciate its craftsmanship. That said, be prepared to think the story is a bit of a challenge, but that's just another joy I get from watching it. I understand it may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it gives me everything I want in a motion picture experience. For me, this is a modern, cinematic masterpiece. Well, I finally got around to seeing this movie, arguably one of the most iconic and definitive films of the 21st century and one of the most significant films I had never seen. Part of the reason I procrastinated so long with it years was because I thought it would be one of those movies that is so sophisticated a normal person can't understand it. Usually with complex movies like these, I actually follow along pretty well until about the hour 15 minute mark, at which point I cease to understand anything that's happening. Examples include Minority Report, The Fugitive, and Flight Plan. To my surprise, I ended up following along pretty well and enjoying the movie much more than I anticipated I would. I've had a slight grudge against anything Christopher Nolan related since I saw The Dark Knight for the first time several months ago, which underwhelmed me completely. Part of the reason I didn't enjoy that film as much was because I had a headache the entire time while watching it. But still, anyways, I had had Inception on DVD for quite a while, and I decided that it was due time to see it, and I'm glad I did. It is very well made, and actually, I think most people will find something to enjoy about it. I'm not going to act like this is some unknown movie that I'm the first one to discover, but I will say that it is quite good. The plot follows Dome Cobb, Leonardo DiCaprio, a skilled extractor who goes into people's subconscious to find information and dreams. Cobb and his fellow extractor Arthur Joseph Gordon-Levitt are tasked by a businessman named Satoru Ken Watanabe to perform Inception inside the subconscious of Robert Pfizer Murphy, the son of one of Satoru's rival businessmen. Inception means putting an idea into a mind instead of taking one out, which is a lot more difficult in this case. Sito wants Cobb and Arthur to put the idea of destroying his father's business into Fisher's head. To do this, Cobb must assemble a team of other people who can pull this off, including M's, Tom Hardy, a conman, Ariadne, Alan Page, who will design the dream worlds and use youth. Delipra, a scientist who is basically their getaway driver. As the team starts to execute their mission, Cobb has troubled because of his dead wife Mole, Marion Card, constantly entering the dreams. That's the basic idea. There is a lot of other complicated stuff that could be considered spoilers that I also won't get into here. I definitely enjoyed at least 80% of this movie. In terms of originality of concepts and creativity, Inception has a lot to offer. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say that it centers around one of the most original movie ideas of the 2010s. The special effects and visual art are very well done. It's kind of a shame I didn't get to see it in theaters, but I would have only been 5 years old at the time, and I was busy watching more appropriate movies. Shout out to all my Planet 51 fans out there. Christopher Nolan did a great job directing this. You can tell it took forever to make. There were multiple scenes where I thought to myself, this must have cost a lot of money because visually it is extremely impressive. The performances are decent and decent only, which is fine because this kind of movie doesn't require much advanced acting. Although I would say DiCaprio did an especially nice job. I think it is also important to point out how smoothly and suavely Inception blends science fiction with the other genres in this movie: action, thriller, drama. If you aren't usually a fan of the sci-fi genre, chances are you won't mind this film. It's almost like it apologizes for placing itself in the science fiction fantasy category and makes up for it with emotionally intense scenes and cop movie-esque street shootouts. Despite this, Inception will still more than satisfy a sci-fi fan's needs for the bending of time and space. I will now take the time to praise the movie's ambiguous and very memorable ending, in which Cobb tests whether he is in reality versus a dream by spinning a special top that will topple over in reality but stay spinning in a dream. He spins it and then walks away without seeing the result to go play with his kids. The camera pans back over to the top, which is still spinning, but also looks like it could fall over. This, I would say, is now one of my new favorite movie endings. I have a few small complaints about the movie, but they aren't anything extremely important. My biggest problem with Inception is, especially in the first act, how the sound effects are almost ridiculously loud and the actual dialogue is kind of quiet and hard to hear. Then whenever you turn the volume up to hear what the characters are saying, there's a huge crash or something, and you have to turn the volume back down again because that was just so loud. So, that could get annoying at times, but by the end, I wasn't really noticing it much. Another complaint I have, which technically has nothing to do with the film itself, but rather the way I watched it, is I hate widescreen. Watching movies wide the screen sucks. Plain and simple. I can't stand a huge black bars on top of the picture, and then the picture itself is so small seeming. I'd take some good old full screen over that any day. And everyone who I've talked about this with doesn't even mind wide a screen. I guess I'm the only one. Anyways, another tiny complaint with Inception that I have is that sometimes it can get a little difficult to determine whether I'm watching something that is inside of a dream or not. But I would imagine the filmmakers were aware that it could become hard to tell and maybe even kept it that way on purpose. I must be dreaming a broken bar, because I think I've just seen the best film of the year, A Broken Bar, and we're only halfway through the year. I must be dreaming a broken bar, because Inception was way too good. I must be dreaming a broken bar, because I loved Inception, even though I probably only understood about 90% of the film, if that. However, I'm not dreaming, and I'm glad I'm not dreaming. Inception is an amazing, imaginative, innovative, clever, exhilarating, and there are way too many positive adjectives to describe the film badass film. I think Christopher Nolan has finally found Noah created his magnum opus, an amazing feat, considering how early Nolan really is in his directorial career. In Inception, director Christopher Nolan takes us into a world where entering people's dreams is a reality. In this world, there are people called extractors, whom are able to enter people's dreams and steal any type of information from practically anyone. Leonardo DiCaprio's character. Cobb is the most skilled extractor, and he has a very important job to do, a job that the basic plot revolves around. Cobb is hired by a very powerful Japanese businessman, Sato Ken Watanabe, to do the impossible, implant a brand new idea into another person's mind. This task is called Inception. The target is another businessman, a rival of Cito's named Robert Feezer Jr., Cillian Murphy. The task of Inception requires in-depth planning and requires experts in a variety of fields. Thus, Cobb must assemble a team of top-notch professionals in those certain important fields. The remarkable Joseph Gordon-Levitt portrays Arthur, Cobb's right-hand man, and has the important task of researching and learning about his targets. The lovely Ellen Page portrays Ariadne, an architect whose sole responsibility is to create the complex world of the dream. Tom Hardy portrays Ems, a wisecracking shapeshifter of sorts, and Depot portrays the chemist Yuzu, who provided the special drugs that enabled everyone to enter Dreams A. He's also important for driving that, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Cobb's team is amazing, and each and every one of them is unique and likable in their own ways. These characters' uniqueness and likability is helped by the fact that they're portrayed by a bunch of strong actors and actresses. The ensemble cast in Inception truly is remarkably strong and superb. So many characters in Inception are portrayed by well-known actors and actresses that I'm glad none of them were wasted. From the trailers, I figured the characters of Sato, Watanabe, and Feezer Jr. Murphy would have minimal screen time because I figured their characters, the former the client, the latter the target, just wouldn't be focused on as much. However, I'm glad I was wrong. But Watanabe's character stuck around for the entire film and is actually important, though you won't know it till the end of the film. And Murphy's character was also featured a lot and important to the overall movement of the plan. Gordon-Levitt's Arthur is very charming and goofy, and the funny scenes that were actually included in Inception were all funny because he was in it. I loved Ellen Page's character. Christopher Nolan was actually very smart for putting a character like Ariadne in the film. Character helps us understand the film better. Since Ariadne is new to the concept of entering other people's dreams, as are we, and all of the complex rules that apply to them, it's extremely helpful when she asks questions, since she's as confused about certain things as we, the audience, are. Paige is Ariadne, is like our senator or representative for the film, since she practically does represent us and raises the same question as we do. I loved how Inception actually got better as it went, along from the first 10 minutes of the film. I couldn't understand anything that was going on. I was so confused and aggravated that I felt disappointed at the film, and I thought I had perhaps overhyped the film way too much. I'm glad that I was able to understand the rest of the film, or at least most of it, as we got further and further into the film, and as the characters kept delving into one layer after another, I grew even more interested and more captivated by it. Inception truly does just gets better and better throughout the film. The complexity of Inception is purposely frustrating and confusing. The film works because of that, and I love movies that make the audience frustrated and make them have to work with the movie in order to enjoy it if they're done right, which Inception definitely did. Films like Inception are more enthralling when they're challenging because you become even more satisfied when you actually succeed in understanding them. The screenplay for Inception was just perfect, and it's actually written by Christopher Nolan. Nolan actually worked on the story for Inception for about 10 years, and it looks like all the hard work he's put into it has paid off. The script was genius. I loved the many twists and turns the film had. I loved how our opinion of Cobb's wife was ever-changing. I loved how we continuously learned new things about the world of Inception as we went along, and I loved the design of the dream world. The only major problem I had with the Inception was the fact that many times I couldn't understand what Sat was saying, and most of the time he was saying something important. It's important to pay attention to every single line spoken in the film. So, when I couldn't understand Cito in his many important scenes, it left me clueless and confused. Also, I couldn't get over the fact that Cito promised Cobb that he would be able to fix all of Cobb's problems with just one phone call. How is he able to do that? Although I'm disappointed that the film never really explains this. I think it's actually better that it didn't. Inception is a near-perfect film and requires multiple viewings to truly understand its complexity. Christopher Nolan is an amazing director who hasn't made one bad film yet. I trust his ability to continue this streak. Freaking out. I cannot get over the very final scene of Inception. That final moment, I think, was the perfect way to end off the film. It's the kind of ending that will frustrate people, but it's also the kind of ending that's debatable and is either praised or hated. I personally love the ending. However, I did, along with almost everyone else in the theater, go after that last important scene. I just love how that ending teases everyone. Inception definitely lives up to, or even surpasses, the hype surrounding it. The film is amazing on multiple levels and in multiple ways for multiple reasons. It's the movie of the summer. It's the movie of the year. And quite frankly, it's one of the best movies of the decade. It's said that Christopher Nolan spent 10 years writing his screenplay for Inception. That must have involved prodigious concentration, like playing blindfold chess while walking a tight wire. The film's hero tests a young architect by challenging her to create a maze, and Nolan tests us with his own dazzling maze. We have to trust him that he can lead us through, because much of the time we're lost and disoriented. Nolan must have rewritten this story time and again, finding that every change had a ripple effect down through the whole fabric. The story can either be told in a few sentences or not told at all. Here is a movie immune to spoilers. If you knew how it ended, that would tell you nothing unless you knew how it got there. And telling you how it got there would produce bafflement. The movie is all about process, about fighting our way through enveloping sheets of reality and dream, reality within dreams, dreams without reality. It's a breathtaking juggling act. And Nolan may have considered his memento. 2000 a warm-up. He apparently started screenplay while filming that one. It was the story of a man with short-term memory loss, and the story was told backwards like the hero of that film. The viewer of Inception is adrift in time and experience. We can never even be quite sure what the relationships between dream time and real time is. The hero explains that you can never remember the beginning of a dream, and that dreams that seem to cover hours may only last a short time. Yes, but you don't know that when you're dreaming. And what if you're inside another man's dream? How does your dream time sync with his? What do you really know? Leonardo DiCaprio is a corporate traitor of the highest order. He infiltrates the minds of other men to steal their ideas. Now he is hired by a powerful billionaire to do the opposite. To introduce an idea into a rival's mind and do it so well he believes is his own. This has never been done before. Our minds are as alert to foreign ideas as our immune system is to pathogens. The rich man named Sato Ken Watanabe makes him an offer he can't refuse, an offer that would end Cobb's forced exile from home and family. Cobb assembles a team, and here the movie relies on the well-established procedures of all heist movies. We meet the people he will need to work with. Arthur Joseph Gordon-Levitt, his longtime associate, teams Tom Hardy, a master at deception, use youth, DeLip, a master chemist, and there is a new recruit, Ariadne, Alan Page, a brilliant young architect who is a prodigy at creating spaces. Cobb also goes to touch base with his father-in-law, Miles, Michael Caine, who knows what he does and how he does it. These days, Michael Caine need only appear on a screen, and we assume he's wiser than any of the other characters. It's a gift. But wait, why does Cobb need an architect to create spaces in dreams? He explains to her dreams have a shifting architecture, as we all know where we seem to be has a way of shifting. Cobb's assignment is the inception or birth or wellspring of a new idea in the mind of another young billionaire, Robert Fisher Jr. Cillian Murphy, heir to his father's empire. Cito wants him to initiate ideas that will lead to the surrender of his rival's corporation. Cobb needs Ariadne to create the deceptive maze space in Fisher's dream so that I think new thoughts can slip in unperceived. Is it A coincidence that Ariadne is named for the woman in Greek mythology who helped Theseus escape from the Minotaur's labyrinth. Cobb tutors Ariadne on the world of dream infiltration, the art of controlling dreams and navigating them. Nolan uses this as a device for tottering us as well, and also as the occasion for some of the movie's astonishing special effects, which seemed senseless in the trailer, but now fit right in. The most impressive to me takes place, or seems to, in Paris, where the city literally rolls back on itself like a roll of linoleum tile. Protecting Fisher are any number of gun-wielding bodyguards who may be working like the mental equivalent of antibodies. They seem alternatively real and figurative. But whichever they are, they lead to a great many gunfights, chase scenes, and explosions, which is the way movies depict conflict these days. So skilled as Nolan that he actually got me involved in one of his chases when I thought I was relatively immune to scenes that have become so standard. That was because I cared about who was chasing and being chased. If you've seen any advertising at all for the film, you know that its architecture has a way of disregarding gravity. Buildings tilt, streets coil, characters float. This is all explained in the narrative. The movie is a perplexing labyrinth without the simple through line and is sure to inspire truly endless analysis on the web. Nolan helps us with an emotional thread. The reason Cobb is motivated to risk the dangers of Inception is because of grief and guilt involving his wife Mole Mary and their 2 children, More. I will not, in a way, cannot say beautifully embodies the wife in an idealized way. Whether we are seeing Cobb's memories or his dreams is difficult to say, even literally in the last shot. But she makes malfunction as an emotional magnet, and the love between the two provides an emotional constant in Cobb's world, which is otherwise ceaselessly shifting. Inception works for the viewer in a way like the world itself worked for Leonard, the hero of Memento. We are always in the now. We have made some notes while getting here, but we are not quite sure where here is yet. Matters of life, death, and the heart are involvational corporations, of course. And Nolan doesn't pause before using well-crafted scenes from spycraft or espionage, including a clever scheme on board a 747, even explaining why it must be a 747. The movies often seem to come from the recycling bin. These days, sequels, remakes, franchises. Inception does a difficult thing. It's wholly original, cut from new clothes, and yet structured with action movie basics. So it feels like it makes more sense than quite possibly it does. I thought there was a hole in Memento, and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.